suppose I can catch them. Yeah. Let's see if we can catch everybody on the diving board today. Hmm. Now that the birds are coming on in, I'm going to read to you poetry for young people. Now that the birds are coming on in. Robert Frost. Edited by Gary D. Schmidt. Poetry for young people. Good. This ought to work fine. As long as they don't interrupt again, right? That's what they do best. Good. This ought to work fine. As long as they don't interrupt again, right? Yeah. They do best. All right. Is that where we are now? Very good. And it looks like the birds came out to listen. If they would just stop interrupting my stream, that would be wonderful. I'm thinking you can probably hear me just fine from here. My goal is not to scare the birds away. Excuse me. All right, let's get started. Of course, it says for Kenneth W. Cooper, who knows that some things gold can stay. Dedication and also. This text was copyright 1994. I believe the last copyright. Published by Scholastic Inc. I'm going to read to you a little bit. We have an introduction about Robert Frost, A New England Life, it's titled. And it shows a portrait of him as a very young man. I'll show you after a while. If you walk down a road in Vermont in midwinter, under a bright blue sky, with the air so cold it seems to thaw only as you breathe it in, you see mountains piled up against each other, stone fences stretching across fields of dried corn stalks, and white birches with crackling black branches. Your feet crunch against the dry snow, while a crow caws about the cold. This is the world of Robert Frost's poetry. Snow and crows and birches, as well as brooks and asters and hayfields and autumn leaves. Seldom has a poet been so identified with a region as Robert Frost has with New England, though he himself would not have claimed this. His poems have the feel of sudden lines that surprised him. You catch a poem just as it comes, he once said. What he caught were poems about New England and about life. On March 26, 1874, Frost was born in San Francisco, which is about as far as you can get from New England and still be in the continental United States. Frost's father was a journalist who edited a city newspaper, and his mother was a teacher. Frost eventually tried his hand at both professions. His father was born in the South but moved to New Hampshire just to become a journalist. He left the region during the Civil War, perhaps because he did not want to be seen as a Yankee, and moved to California. As if to tweak the nose of New England, he named his son after the South's most famous general, Robert E. Lee. But after his father's death in 1885, 11-year-old Robert, his sister Jeannie, and her mother returned to New England. The family had no money, so they lived with Robert's grandfather in Lawrence, Massachusetts. It's never easy to return home, though. Frost hated his work as a bobbin boy in his grandfather's mills. He disliked his grandfather's strictness and the way he made Frost's mother feel responsible for his father's death. Soon his mother could stand it no longer. She went a few miles south to Salem, New Hampshire, to teach, settling herself and her family with a nearby farm wife. The pay was poor, so Frost took a job as a cobbler, nailing heels to boots to help pay the rent. Frost did well at the village school in Salem. During the next 3 years, Frost's grandfather offered to pay for the train fare that would allow him to attend Lawrence High School. Frost was elated and soon became the top student in his class. When Frost was 16, he began to write poetry, jotting down words that seemed to just come into his mind. But he was not yet thinking of becoming a poet. Perhaps he was thinking more about Eleanor White, with whom he had shared the highest honors in his school when they graduated in 1892. The years after his graduation were frustrating for Frost. His grandfather demanded that he go on to Dartmouth, but Frost wasn't interested in college. He was interested in poetry, however, and soon all he was doing was wandering through the woods, reading a collection of British poems. So he left Dartmouth and returned to Lawrence. He worked in the mills again and kept reading and writing. When he was 19, he sent his first poem to a magazine called The Independent. It was accepted, and Robert Frost knew he wanted to be a poet. Funny, my mom worked at a newspaper called The Independent. Even a poet needs income, so he tried his father's profession, writing for a weekly newspaper called The Sentinel. He liked the writing, but hated prying into things he thought were none of his business. He quit after only a few months, then taught school with his mother and sister. In 1895, Eleanor White came to teach with them, and soon afterward, in December, she and Frost were married. But Frost did not enjoy teaching young children, and there was little money coming in. The following year, the Frosts had a son. To earn more money, the new father decided that he would be a college teacher. But first he had to finish college himself. With help from his grandfather, he began studies at New England's most prestigious university, Harvard. But the courses bored him. He became sick, but even worse, his son Elliot also grew ill and then died. There seemed no reason to stay at Harvard. Frost left without finishing, which meant he could not teach college. Eleanor begged Frost's grandfather to help them buy a farm. Grandfather was reluctant but willing. If Frost would commit himself to working the farm for 10 years, his grandfather would pay for it. Frost agreed, and in 1900, he, Eleanor, and their new baby daughter settled into a dairy farm in Derry, New Hampshire. During the day, he did all the chores to keep the farm going, and at night, when the house was completely still, he wrote poetry. Those were the years when he wrote such poems as Mending Wall and October. It was hard for Frost to make go of his rocky farm, especially since he had 3 more children over the next 5 years. Money was scarce, and when the director of Pinkerton Academy heard Frost read one of his poems, he was impressed. He asked Frost to teach an English class 2 days each week, and Frost agreed. He needed the money for food. Frost stayed for 10 years, he promised his grandfather, and then sold the farm. He had never liked the busy schedule of a farmer, and he suffered from hay fever, so he couldn't cut his own hay. Although editors rejected his poems over the years because they seemed too modern, Frost knew he had to keep trying. The family had to find a place where they could live on the little money and where Frost would be free to write his poetry. Perhaps thinking of the British poets he had read at Dartmouth, Frost decided to go to England. In the autumn of 1912, Frost and his family settled into a small country farmhouse thatched with thick straw. Ignoring the pile of rejection letters that he had received from editors in the U.S., Frost bought 30 of his poems to a publisher in London. 3 days later, he heard that he had been accepted for a book. Within a year, New England's poet's life as a professional began. A Boy's Will was published in 1913, followed by North of Boston the next year. And when the books were reprinted in America, Frost said to Eleanor, "My book has gone home, we must go too." And so the Frost family returned to England in 1914. Frost came back to a country with arms open wide to receive him. Editors who had earlier rejected his poems were anxious to publish them. But his poetry was still not making much money, and his first 2 books earned him only $200. As the family settled in, Frost looked about his world for inspiration. He saw birches and fields and mountains, and those are what he wrote about. He walked across upland pastures and wrote The Vantage Point. He explored a forest whose leaves had turned golden in the autumn chill, and wrote The Road Not Taken. He watched cows munching on apples and wrote The Cow in Apple Time. He saw boys climbing birch trees and wrote Birches. The years after his return from England were busy. His poems were praised by critics, and people came to New England to meet him. They also asked him to read at colleges such as Amherst, Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, and Michigan. The trips interrupted his writing, and he always seemed to come back with a cold. But he went because the reading brought in money. As he became better known, Frost was asked to teach, first at Amherst and then at other universities. And his dream of becoming a college teacher finally came true. In fact, in 1920, he even helped to start a college, the Breadloaf School of English in Vermont. Well, that's so funny. Personal laughter, sorry. He was a challenging, witty, and sometimes grouchy teacher. I feel like the universe is literally poking fun at me right now, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. Once throwing away a whole pile of compositions his students had written, but his students loved him, for he made them think. In 1923, Frost published New Hampshire, which won the Pulitzer Pulitzer Prize, one of the country's most prestigious awards. 7 years later, he won his second Pulitzer for his collected poems, and then astonishingly a third Pulitzer in 1936 for A Further Range. No one was surprised when he won his fourth Pulitzer Prize in 1942. Yes. These books, together with his teachings and many tours, finally earned him the money that had previously eluded him. In 1957, Frost attended a dinner in England held in his honor. T.S. Eliot, the greatest English poet then living, gave the toast. He also lived in New England, and he knew that Frost was writing about. Frost, he said, was writing about the whole world, about feelings and ideas that everyone everywhere understood. Those who were there saw that Frost nearly began to weep. The next year, Frost spoke at Breadloaf, thinking of the toast by T.S. Eliot. There ought to be in everything you write some sign that you come from almost anywhere, he said. Perhaps that is what keeps Robert Frost so alive today. Even to people who have never set foot in Vermont, in writing about New England, Frost was also writing about everywhere. Frost became the country's most beloved poet. He received the formal congratulations of the United States Senate when he turned 75, and again a decade later. The next year, he read his poem, The Gift, outright at the inauguration of President John F. Kennedy. When he died 3 years later, people around the world mourned, many remembering him for what he was, a great poet. So I think what I'll focus on today is the poems of summer. Considering. So the first one is titled The Pasture. I'm going out to clean the pasture spring. I'll only stop to rake the leaves away and wait to watch the water clear, I may. I shan't be gone long. You come too. I'm going out to fetch the little calf that's standing by the mother. It's so young. It totters when she licks it with her tongue. I shan't be gone long. You come too. Robert Frost used the pasture to introduce his poetry. In this poem, he seems to be talking perhaps to a friend, someone he loves, or a stranger who has stopped by. He asks the listener to come out to the pasture with him, to see the things that he will see. For Frost is also asking his reader to come into his world, a world of pastures, leaves, springs, and young calves newly born. Next one's titled Rose Begonias. Rose Begonias. A saturated meadow, sun-shaped and jewel-small, a circle scarcely wider than the trees around were tall. Where winds were quite excluded and the air was stifling sweet, with the breath of many flowers, a temple of the heat. There we bowed us in the burning as the sun's right worship is, to pick where none could miss them 1,000 orchises. For though the grass was scattered, yet every second spear seemed tipped with wings of color that tinged the atmosphere. They raised a simple prayer before we left the spot, that in the general mowing that place might be forgot, or if not also favored, obtain such grace of ours, that none should mow the grass there while so confused with flowers. Well, I wish I had an opportunity to read this poem to the road crew who thought it was a good idea to mow down all of the blue flowers along the road. I didn't get a chance to tell you, but the next day, the section that they left unmowed, of course they came back just to mow down the flowers. It was like 15 or so bunches of, blue chicory. It wasn't tall grasses, nothing that interfered with anyone's perspective pulling out of a driveway, including my own. But sure enough, tit for tat, they came back to mow it down. I just shook my head. I mean, it just shows me how much they care about people's feelings and the earth. And the common sense of saving taxpayers' monies to fill gas to a mower that is being used unnecessarily. There's so many different ways you could look at that perspective. I was saddened by it, but I can only control myself and no one else. It says here that flowers last only a short time, especially if they are growing in a hayfield, or they will be cut and harvested along with the hay. But Frost, thinking about how short and sweet beauty is, tries in this poem to find a way to keep the flowers and their beauty from being cut. I mean, to me, it's just a simple awareness. I don't think it's complicated. I don't think it's offensive. I just think it's a simple awareness. Okay. The The next one is the tuft of flowers. I went to turn the grass once after one, who mowed it in the dew before the sun. The dew was gone that made his blade so keen before I came to view the leveled scene. I looked for him behind an aisle of trees. I listened for his whetstone on the breeze. But he had gone his way, the grass all mown, and I must be, as he had been, alone. As all must be, I said within my heart, whether they work together or apart. But as I said it, swift there passed me by, on noiseless wing, a bewildered butterfly, seeking with memories grown dim overnight, some resting flower of yesterday's delight. And once I marked his flight go round and round, as where some flower lay withering on the ground. And then he flew as far as I could see, and then on tremulous wing came back to me. I thought of questions that have no reply, and would have turned to toss the grass to dry. But he turned first and led my eye to look at a tall tuft of flowers beside a brook. A leaping tongue of bloom the scythe had spared, beside a reedy brook the scythe had bared. The mower in the dew had loved them thus, by leaving them to flourish not for us, nor yet to draw one thought of ours to him, but from sheer morning gladness at the brim. The butterfly and I had lit upon, nevertheless, a message from the dawn, that made me hear the wakening birds around, and hear his long scythe bring to the ground, and feel a spirit kindred to my own, so that henceforth I worked no more alone. But glad with him I worked as with his aid, and weary sought at noon with him the shade, and dreaming as it were held brotherly speech with one whose thought I had not hoped to reach. Men work together, I told him from the heart, whether they work together or apart. Seriously, I had no intentions of choosing this book today. And here it is again, the universe complimenting what it is I have to say. Oh, poet, they didn't know it. Well, it says here, after a hayfield had been mown, the long grass had to be turned over after a time so that it would dry on both sides and not rot. This can be a boring job, especially if you are doing it alone and by hand. And that's how this poem begins, with a man working alone and facing a dull day. But not how it ends. Written in couplets, pairs of rhyming lines, the poem seems to mirror the rhythm of a scythe. Men work together. Well, we should. We really should. I don't know if we do it enough. The next poem, titled Encounter, goes with this illustration. An encounter. Once on the kind of day called a weather breeder, when the heat slowly hazes and the sun, by its own power, seems to be undone, I was half boring through, half climbing through, a swamp of cedar, choked with oil of cedar and scurf of plants, and weary and overheated, and sorry I ever left the road I knew. I paused and rested on a sort of hook. It had me by the coat, as good as seated, and since there was no other way to look, looked up toward heaven, and there against the blue stood over me a resurrected tree. A tree that had been down and raised again, a barkless spectre. He had halted too, as if for fear of treading upon me. I saw the strange position of his hands, up at his shoulders, dragging yellow strands of wire with something in it from men to men. You here? I said. Where aren't you nowadays? And what's the news you carry? If you knew, if you know. And tell me where you're off for. Montreal? Me? I'm not off for anywhere at all. Sometimes I wander out of beaten ways, half looking for the orchid calypso. At times in his poetry, Frost brings together two images that you would never expect to see together. In this poem, he's out for a walk in the woods and comes upon a barkless spectre. Watch for clues that Frost gives as to what this spectre might be, and why it's so unusual to come upon it in the middle of the woods. If you think back at the illustration, is he talking about a tree? I'll show you once again. It once was a tree. Next one is called a ghost house. I dwell in a lonely house I know that vanished many a summer ago, and left no trace but the cellar walls, and a cellar in which the daylight falls, and the purple-stemmed wild raspberries grow. O'er ruined fences, the grapevine shield, the woods come back to the mowing field. The orchard tree has grown one copse of new wood and old where the woodpecker chops. The footpath down to well is healed. I dwell with a strangely aching heart in that vanished abode there far apart, on the disused and forgotten road that has no dust bath now for the toad. Night comes, the black bats tumble and dart. The whippoorwill is coming to shout and hush and cluck and flutter about. I hear him begin far enough away, full many a time to say his say, before he arrives to say it out. It is under the small, dim summer star. I know not who these mute folks are, who share the unlit place with me. Those stones out under the low-limbed tree doubtless bear names that Moses mar. They are tireless folk, but slow and sad, though too close-keeping our lass and lad, with none among them that ever sings, and yet in views how many things, as sweet companions as might be had. The house in this poem has been long abandoned. Nothing is left of it but the cellar walls. It was probably once a farmhouse, since the raspberries, grapevines, and mowing field all suggest that the land around it was once farmed. As a child plays in the forgotten rooms, he imagines those who once lived there. Funny, that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm metal detecting. Here's the illustration that comes along with the ghost house. Yeah, the other day I dug up what I think is like an old metal toy tractor. I mean, it's in horrible condition and it's missing half its parts, but I thought that was kind of neat. I hadn't pulled up any metal toys before. It tells me that there were children here once. You know, aside from the generation I knew who lived here before me. Yeah, neat, right? The next one is called A Girl's Garden. A Girl's Garden. A neighbor of mine in the village likes to tell how one spring, when she was a girl on the farm, she did a childlike thing. One day she asked her father to give her a garden plot to plant and tend and reap herself, and he said, why not? In casting about for a corner, he thought of an idle bit. In casting about for a corner, he thought of an idle bit of walled-off ground where a shop had stood, and he said, just it. And he said that ought to make you an ideal one-girl farm and give you a chance to put some strength on your slim Jim arm. It was not enough of a garden, her father said to plow, so she had to work it by hand. But she don't mind now. She wheeled the dung in the wheelbarrow along a stretch of road, but she always ran away and left her not nice load, and hid from anyone passing, and then she begged the seed. She says she thinks she planted one of all things but weed. A hill each of potatoes, radishes, lettuce, peas, tomatoes, beets, beans, pumpkins, corn, and even fruit trees. And yes, she has long mistrusted that a cider apple tree in bearing there today is hers, or at least may be. Her crop was a miscellany, when all was said and done, a little bit of everything and a great deal of none. Now when she sees in the village how village things go, just when it seems to come in right, she says, I know. It's as when I was a farmer, oh never by way of advice, and she never sins by telling the tale to the same person twice. This poem about a young girl's garden is meant to be humorous, so Frost gives it a light and bouncing rhythm. But even though the story is a funny one, Frost makes a serious point about human nature. I have to giggle. I struggled with my garden this year, and I completely didn't do anything that I've done all the years prior. And I still have enjoyed every bit of color and every wrangled flower that managed to burst through what I didn't get a chance to weed. There's still a handful of insects and birds and things. Nothing as beautiful as I've had in the past, but beautiful nonetheless. The next poem is titled The Vantage Point. If tired of trees I seek again mankind, will I know where to hie me in the dawn, to a slope where the cattle keep the lawn, there amid lolling juniper recline, myself unseen, I see in white defined. Far off the homes of men, and farther still, the graves of men on an imposing hill, living or dead, whichever are to mine. If by noon I have too much of these, I have but to turn on my arm and lo, the sunburned hillside sets my face aglow. My breathing shakes the bluid like a breeze. I smell the earth, I smell the bruised plant. I know in the crater of an ant. Ooh, I look in the crater of an ant. A vantage point is a place that allows you to see all around you. In this poem, Frost looks at two different worlds, nature and humanity, and seems at home in gold. So what's neat is the illustration shows a small hill and a man walking up. But if you don't focus on the man on the hill from a distance, it would kind of look like an anthill. So to me, this illustration is absolutely perfect for this poem. And again, I always apologize for my mispronunciations and repeats of lines, but I don't practice anything that I read to you. And I probably haven't opened up this book for another 10, 15 years either. But I'm hoping you can see what I see at the vantage point. Really beautifully illustrated. The next one's called Hyla Brook. It says here that many poems are written to celebrate beautiful rivers and pleasant streams, but this one is about a brook that can run dry. Still, for the poet, there seems to be something quite special about it. So we'll have to listen to that. I'm happy to see the birds are coming and grabbing a snack. Hyla Brook. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. By June our brooks run out of song and speed. Sought for much after that, it will be found. Either to have gone groping underground, and taken with it all the Hyla breed, that shouted in the midst a month ago, like ghost of sleigh bells and a ghost of snow, or flourished and come up in a jewel weed, weak foliage that is blown upon and bent, even against the way it waters went. Its bed is left a faded paper sheet of dead leaves stuck together by the heat. A brook to none but who remember long, this as it will be seen is other far. Other far. That as it will be seen is other far. Then with brooks taken otherwhere, in song, we love the things we love for what they are. That one was a little tough for me to read. That happens kind of here in my yard, even though most of the water's been rerouted by properties around me. Certain times a year it settles. When I first moved in here, no one had rerouted anything. I had beautiful ecosystems, swampy areas, full of frogs, full of life. Now that it's been rerouted, it's all turning to trees. I don't hear any frogs right now in the summer evening, and it's breaking my heart. Had to have hatched over hundreds of them last year. I'm not even sure why he rerouted anything. His house is above where the water was. And it really worked beautifully the way it was just a tiny stream that went across and into mine. I didn't ask for that to dry up back there. I liked it the way it was. I hadn't really touched this property. I tried to just let it be. But people don't realize when they make decisions around you, even without purposefully, they impact everything. Really disappointed by those choices. And the lack of accountability that comes along with it. I'm okay with change. I just don't like forced change. Kind of similar to my life right now. I haven't been able to make a decision without somebody having already made that decision for me. It's even like this channel. I mean, I guess when I go to replay this, half of it will be gone or muted. if I have the opportunity, I'll continue reading the poems in the section for autumn. For now, I guess I'll just watch the birds. Anybody want to tell me who's responsible for this channel? Exactly. You might as well out yourself. Stolen channel. This one's been going for an long time. This one's 1 minute and 45 seconds. Whose channel is this? You want to tell me how you're both me? You can't both, we can't, no. There can't be two of me, can there? I don't think so. You're caught. Yeah. There aren't two of me. And there aren't two neighborsue channels, are there? There's one neighborsue channel and one stolen neighborsue channel. I mean, it is what it is, right? Enjoy the birds while you can. Ho hum. Oh, it's me again. Yeah, I'm making an appearance on both channels. My channel and the stolen one. Have you had your fill of birds today? Did you enjoy when just me, I read some Robert Frost poems to you? I don't think the other person was doing that. Do you? No, just pretending that they were me. Yeah. This is fun. Two simultaneous channels running at the same time. One's mine and one's not. You be the judge. Yeah, you do it. And if you think this is fair, then disregard it. If you don't think this is fair, report it immediately. Thanks, I'd appreciate it. I've done the same for a few of you because it's the right thing to do. Thanks. Report it immediately while they're both still on. Who's going to question that? It's not nice to steal someone else's content without their consent or awareness or the okay or some sort of contracted teamwork operation. This situation is none of those things. This is flat out stolen channel business. Look. I really don't know how you people feel about this. But I'm not in two places at once. And my cloned phone can clearly show you that someone else is robbing me of my channel. It is my content, it is my home, it is my bird feeder. I'm not exactly sure why or how YouTube has allowed this to go on as long as it has, but it needs to stop. And the only way for that to happen is for you to all report it, because they are disregarding me. Why? Because somebody's making a lot of money hiding me. Well, as you can see, I'm not that hidden, am I? Only when it works for someone else. Someone who's been accruing a lot of time on me, on my behalf. Thanks. So let's watch the birds together, all of us. Me, Stolen Channel, and you. And we'll see who does the right thing and who doesn't. The birds don't care either way. They're eating. Bad fucking idea. That's all I have to say. Bad fucking idea. Look, not AI. My 5 fingers in front of my bird feeder. Look. Look. Going across one to the other. Yeah. Not cool. Well, you see, I'm just not really sure how you all feel about this never-ending trauma, but I'd like it to stop. So again, I'm going to show you. How is that channel? Over here. Look. How are they doing that? Yeah. It was all a bad move, wasn't it? Is it you? Slow-moving car? Someone on my Wi-Fi, I can tell you that. If not, my IP address. Ridiculous. You tell me. You tell me how this is happening. Anybody gonna help me fix it? It's wrong. It's really wrong, and it's been going on for a very long time. Yeah, I did every possible thing they suggest. Everything. Every possible thing was blocked. How about that? Wait till something goes wrong with your channel, and you want support, and you want help, and nothing happens for over a year. You go on and tell me how you feel. It's not cool at all. Not cool at all. again? Anybody have any answers yet? Not AI, buddies. Not on this channel or this channel. There should only be how many? One. So whoever you are, stealing my live streams, my shorts, any kind of content I put out there, it's time to stop. It's time to give up the ridiculousness that you've been doing for quite some time now. It's over. both locations you had simultaneous thunder rumbles. Pretty amazing. Special effects, don't you think? on both channels. The one channel that's being streamed in 2 different places. Is it? Still going? Sure is. Well, we got a little lightning and some rain. So the real channel and the stolen channel have to go now. The birds will still come out and eat. They don't seem to care when it rains. Woo! I'm sure you can hear that. So both channels, yeah, both live streams are signing off. Thanks for hanging out, and I sure as hell hope you reported this, because the only way I get my channel back is if we work as a team. Thanks. Ooh, listen to that. Woo-hoo-hoo! Grab your ball, Roey. Woo-hoo-hoo! That's a good one.